Good evening and welcome to the Public Service Committee. It is Tuesday, September 13th. We are going to rearrange things a little bit with Public Service Committee members' approval. We're going to first start with the Shields Iceplex and Huther Family Match Point presentation. And the landfill ordinance, item 3, with your permission, is going to be moved to the October 4th informational meeting. Is any comments? Is that all right? Everybody okay with that?
Okay with that.
Perfect. Sounds good. I believe we need to approve the meeting notes from the last meeting. If I could just get a motion for that.
Second, Selbert.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Those are approved. So first off, we're going to start, like I said, with Shields Iceplex. I believe Mr. Zuger is here today, if you'd like to come forward. We would just like updates on both facilities and ask for your presentation.
Hi, Joe Zuger with Workplace IT Management here in Sioux Falls, as well as the Ice Sports Association. I don't know how I click through this. Do you click or do I click?
Where'd we lose Jim? I'll grab him. He should be right here.
It's not complicated work, but I can only do one thing at a time. Let's try this. Okay, got it. We're good. I got it. So, some familiar faces here, some new faces. I know our project spanned a fair number of years, so we've had the opportunity to see some council members come and go. So anyway, for those of you who I haven't met, thanks for taking time today. I thought I would, if you'd indulge us briefly, to just talk a little bit about Ice Sports Association, which is the background into how we got to where the Shields Iceplex is. Give a brief history of sort of the ice community in Sioux Falls, because frankly the history is really what got us to where we are today. What our vision was when we put the program and the initiative together that resulted in the development of the Shields Iceplex, how we turned that into a reality, and then a little bit of an operational update to date, what we believe the impact on the community has been, and then a few thoughts on the future, and certainly would be happy to answer any questions. So the Ice Sports Association is a South Dakota nonprofit corporation. We are a 501c3. We were founded in 2009, recognizing that what had been sort of a chronic, decades-old issue with developing indoor ice facilities wasn't going to be solved either publicly or by the user group, so we led a private effort to do that. We really started our initiative after organizing in 2009, our legal entity. We started with a feasibility study, and then in 2010, we hired Sioux Salter in 2010 and started our fundraising activities in 2011. So Ice Sports Association is the legal entity that owns and operates the Shields Iceplex. So we have a DBA, if you will. We own this public facility, but the ownership entity is the Ice Sports Association. Myself, Greg Starnes, who's an attorney at the Woods Fuller Law Firm, and Ben Graham were the organizers. And as I mentioned, Sue Salter, who's with us here today, served as our executive director from 2010 to 2014 and really captained the ship every day. So a historical perspective on the journey to indoor ice in Sioux Falls and how we got here. And I lived a lot of this, so I will go quickly through it. In 75 and 76, the city of Sioux Falls actually bought assets to put indoor ice in the expo building in concert with the county out at the fairgrounds. That was deemed not feasible for a number of practical, financial, and other reasons. So in 1977, 78, that equipment was retired. It was put up for public auction, and an ophthalmologist here in the town by the name of Dr. Tom White did not want to see those assets leave town, so he bought them personally from the city, put them in storage, eventually leased them to West Fargo, North Dakota, and deployed them up there until 1980. And so from 77 to 80, this is sort of what indoor ice looked like in Sioux Falls. You can see this is Drake Springs, and there's Farners Tri-State on Cliff Avenue. So this is what it looked like back in the day. In 1979, a group that we frankly paralleled our organization around, led by some men around town, Al English, John Gross, Jim Becker, Dick Alden, Bill Willett, organized something called Minnehaha Ice, which was also a South Dakota nonprofit. And they basically scraped and scampered together. They got land from Dr. Giebink off 50th Street or wherever the SFRC is. I don't know that exact street. Dr. White called his equipment back from Fargo. They raised money from everyone they could. Two of those organizers mortgaged their personal residences at 22% interest in 1980, which is a fairly bold move. And the MRC was built in 1981, so indoor ice facilities went from Drake Springs to looking a little bit like this. That guy in the front's my brother with a mullet. We did skate in the SFRC. Back then it was the MRC, the first year without a roof, but it got us out of the wind. Looked a little bit like that. Worked for Open Skate. You can kind of see what that looks like, and there's kind of a lobby shot, pretty crowded place. But so roll the clock forward. That facility was a very one-off facility. They thought it might be around for 10 years or so, and then that there might be an initiative for a grander. And it was a bit of a cockroach of a facility. So some almost 20 years later, in 99 and 2000, in the absence of a succession plan, they deeded that property to the city, and then the MRC became the SFRC. The city contracted with Sioux Falls Sports, the ownership entity of the Sioux Falls Stampede, to run the rink. So the city owned the asset and had a management contract with the Stampede. And then eventually, when the Iceplex opened, the SFRC was wound down right around Thanksgiving or the 1st of December in 2014. So that's a little bit how we got here. Obviously, back in the day, the MRC worked fine. The Expo was added in 1995, and it was a fractional year kind of a solution. And roll forward to 2000, 2005, 2010, we recognized two core needs. Number one, there wasn't enough ice in Sioux Falls. We had 9 months of ice at the SFRC and about 4.5 months of ice a year at the Expo. So there was about 13.5 rink months of ice time, if you think about it. So one was there was way more demand than there was supply, because these aren't activities that you can do outside. The second thing was we were universally recognized as having the worst ice facilities in the region. So they were very substandard. At times they weren't safe. There was some carbon monoxide issues. There was security issues at the Expo. And so anyway, Sioux Falls was sort of considered the laughing stock of the ice community. So with those two needs in mind, our organization, our nonprofit, set out to say, how can we make this a success? Well, the first thing we did was developed a business plan that substantiated the demand and how 3 rinks of supply could meet the demand. And the first thing we realized from an economic standpoint is how important it was for us to build 3 rinks and not 2. If you've studied any economics, it's a simple matter of marginal revenue on 3 rinks far outpacing marginal costs or marginal expenses. So the cash flow comes from really having that 3rd rink. We wanted to maximize our equity in the project because we knew we could support some debt, just not a lot of debt. So this is a very equity-rich intention from the beginning. We knew we had to establish private management and professional management, and I chuckle at this phrase that you need to run this like a business. There's no other way to run it. It is a business. And we need to address the needs of the entire user base, not just the largest, and think about new users that might emerge. And then frankly, we wanted to remain a nonprofit. Everybody we serve is nonprofit, and I think the dynamics of a for-profit arena serving nonprofit interests really gets screwy. So we wanted to be sort of top to bottom landlord, nonprofit landlord to a lot of nonprofit users, if you will, or nonprofit folks. So realizing the vision. In 2010, I think there's a lot of traps you can fall into fighting political issues and battles of control and who's going to build it and where it should be built. All of stuff our group looked at and said that's all interesting fodder, but if you don't have any money, you don't have a project. So we spent much more than 90% of our time on fundraising and developing a business plan, and less than 10% of our time talking about the pleasantries of where the rink would be built, who was going to build it, what color it was going to be painted, and all the nonsense that gets in the way of progress. We started a leadership phase fundraising effort in 2011, raised about $3.6 million doing that, $1.8 million basically from the user groups, $750,000 from the Shields Foundation. We had $1 million anonymous donor that matched us once we exceeded $2 million. We pitched for the community, the Chamber Community Appeal, which is a long-standing fundraising opportunity in Sioux Falls, and we're executed that in 2013 for about another $1.5 million. The city was in for $1.5 million of CIP funds, and then after we got into the red zone, we went back to a lot of people and raised another $1.3 million in what we called the warrior phase, which was when you're late and tired and not there yet, but really need more money. And we had met a lot of people along the way who said, good luck, come back if you get closer. So we raised about $7.9 million in equity. It cost us about $300,000 to do that from 2010 to 2014. Originally, we had this long plan to build 5 different phases, starting at $7.7 million, eventually someday getting to $11 million. That long story short was we opted to build a scaled back kind of all-in upfront solution. It's a metal building. We dropped the lobby from 2 stories to 1 story. We used metal bleachers rather than precast, et cetera. Focused on our needs, not our wants. Really limited our parking out of the gate. We only put dehumidification utilities in 2 of the 3 rinks versus, because one of them wasn't going to be used in the summer. We bought used equipment, just really counted our pennies. And so we were up and operational, furnished and running in October of 2014 for about $9.3 million. If you could do the math, obviously 7.9 minus expenses doesn't equate to 9.3, so we do have some debt. Operationally to date, we opened in October of 2014. All 3 sheets were up and running by the 1st of November. We exceeded our year 1 revenue projections. Our expenses were higher than forecasted, but we met our overall net operating income projection for year 1. The better news is we had 1 year of actuals, and moving into year 2, we really were able to do some quality work on the budget and forecasting. We put another conservative but honest budget together for year 2. We've exceeded those revenue actuals by 14.5%, as well as our net operating income actuals by 14.5%. Since we started, we've reduced our bank debt by $1.6 million, which is ahead of the way the notes are written with the bank, so we're feeling good about that. And we've met all of our debt service obligations so far. And along the way, we've been able to operate with about 4 to 6 months of operating capital on hand. You know, obviously, if something bad would happen to an ice rink, you really can't generate any revenue. So far, we've avoided those situations. So we've tried to have a healthy rainy day fund in the event we would lose ice for any period due to something unforeseen. We've total payroll to date's been somewhere in the $325,000 range. We have 3 full-time employees and a whole slew of part-time kind of folks that go in and out of there. We had a plan to do 1 sheet in the summer until further notice, and then going to 2 sheets in the summer, and then going to 3 sheets. We've frankly been overwhelmed by the demand. Last summer, when we intended on having 1 sheet, we actually ran 2 sheets. This summer, when we intended on running 2 sheets, we ran all 3. So somewhere between, probably 4 to 6 years ahead of schedule. The rink is a rink 12 months out of the year. So I mentioned that kind of 13 and a half rink months of ice supply we used to have. We're up to 36 right now. So it's been substantial demand that we're serving. Since we've opened, we've completed an additional roughly $400,000 in capital improvements. We increased our parking load by about 60%. We added some landscaping, some sprinkler. We added dehumidification to the south rink so we can run it in the warm months, and we added a women-only team room or locker room. There's lots of females playing on men's teams, and we sort of fell 1 short in our locker room count doing that, so we added 1 after the fact. And our conclusion is that, if you really lay out a great business plan and there's true quantifiable community need, and you build these facilities with equity and not debt, you can make them work. So that's probably the good news. Impact otherwise, we just some inside the numbers. We've had about 30,000 open skate transactions in this first 23 months of operations. That excludes these all-you-can-skate passes we sell. A couple 22,000 skate rentals, almost 500 hours of private ice rental where someone could come out and sign up to use the rink for an hour. Stick and puck is basically open skate where we allow sticks and hockey pucks, almost 4,000 transactions there. A couple thousand drop-in hockey, sort of open gym type stuff. We've increased our public skate hours from 9 hours a week at the SFRC to almost between 23 and 26, depending on the season, which was one of the things that was a sort of a major objective of the asset use agreement that we put in place with the city. We donate lots of skate passes to charities and fundraisers, and we've had people that have been ill or lost loved ones or facing hardship. We've had a number of really neat fundraisers out there as well. We host daycares, school and church groups, homeschoolers, we're the gymnasium for the homeschoolers, and we do that all at discounted rates to serve the public. The Hy-Vee Legends clinics that you see every summer have now been expanded to include free open clinics for the kids, which is kind of neat. Impact on our tenants, in the 10 years from 2004 to 2013, youth hockey grew by 18% in that decade. In the 2 years since we've opened, they've grown by 23%. So we really feel like we're seeing some neat quantifiable impacts. Sioux Falls Figure Skating, which runs not only competitive figure skating club, but also does Learn to Skate, which I would tell you is the equivalent of sort of swimming lessons on the ice, if you will. Has been astounding. Overall participation's up 200 and almost 20% there, and 2.5 times growth in the Learn to Skate numbers, which is neat because those are just young people from the community coming out and learning how to do a new activity. So we're pretty proud of that. We're home to the Junior Stampede Tier 1, U14, U16, and U18 elite programs. There's a curling club in town that was out there about 9 months out of the year. There's C-League hockey now, and dozens of tournaments, shows, exhibitions, camps, et cetera. It's a busy place, and one thing Sue and I used to talk about when we were working on this is our primary objective is to wear out the hinges on the front door, and I just approved an invoice a week ago from Heartland Glass to come out, and they actually had to adjust the hinges on the front door. So it looks a little different now. You know, there's some shots of our open skate in kind of stark contrast to what it once was. We have a Friday night cosmic disco skate that's kind of cool and groovy, and that's a typical youth hockey with families and kids. And the lobby is sort of the ice user town square, if you will. That's not an uncommon scene. Pretty neat place to be. That's us busting out of the parking lot in an April tournament, parking across the street in the weeds. So that's kind of it. The future, as I see it, you know, we continue to plan our work and work our plan. We want to keep retiring debt, and we want to assess some responsible opportunities to expand. This is a quick and dirty diagram of kind of how our lot is populated with the 3 ice rinks today. If we continue to be good stewards of this and do this responsibly, you know, we could conceive of a 4th sheet and maybe even a 5th and 6th sheet one day, and have a 6-sheet facility out there under one roof, which would be a really fantastic story to tell. And ultimately, we have this. I want to go back here. I don't know if I can get this to play or not, but I can't. There's this really cool coalition of, if you look at the snowflake down in the corner, it looks like a snowflake, but if you look at it, it's actually a bunch of stick people who are getting arm in arm and putting their heads together. Some of you have seen this before. But the one thing we want to do is maintain this stakeholder coalition. This little illustration shows the user groups, the city, the business community, and our nonprofit all sort of rallying around and forming this little snowflake that we think should stay in place, and we should continue to address the needs, and who knows where the future will take us. So that's a picture of the rink with a rainbow over it. That's kind of cool. So any questions anyone's have, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your presentation. I'll turn it over to the council. We'll do questions here first until we can always bring them back up if you think of something down the road. Any questions?
Go first.
All right, I'll go
Councilor
first.
Starr.
First of all, Joe, thank you. That's pretty exciting what we've done as a community. It was fun to watch this group come together, and it is much fun for you to see this project completed. Where you showed some future growth, would you see that makes the most sense to continue if there is ever an expansion to be in that one location, or does multiple locations around the city make more sense?
Well, it depends on whether you want this thing to need a subsidy or stay afloat on its own, which I don't care one way or the other, but you can all entitled to your opinions. But getting back to my point, the reason we built a 3-sheet arena instead of a 2-sheeter is simple economics. You only need 1 rink manager. You only need 1 electrical service, 1 light bill, et cetera. And I will tell you that all of this stuff we're doing at conservatively 20% lower hourly rates than you'd find in the Twin Cities. Our ice time's $160 an hour. In prime time, they're over $200 up there. And the reason is you have a lot of one-sheet facilities, and they all are kind of, so the more you can put it under one roof and at one facility, the more you can appreciate those. So certainly, and everybody's going to look at me as very self-interested in this, but I'm proud of the fact that we pay our own bills. And so the answer would be, and that's before you get into, can you have bigger tournaments when you have 4 sheets under one roof? You can. Is it easier? There's not that many 4, 5, 6 sheet facilities in the country. So certainly my vote is that that's the logical place to do it. And that's before you look at what Sanford's doing with that broader complex and so on and so forth. It's not that hard to get there. We're right at the corner of 2 interstates. You can get to the interstate from anywhere. I live on 57th and Western. It takes me 12 minutes door to door. I don't know if that's a direct enough answer, but the reality of it is, if you look at the economics of this, which is what we had to address in the beginning, and money will always be an issue here, not only the capital side, but the operating side. Clearly the right answer is to invest more around this facility, and not worry about running all over and having arenas compete with one another, and Mom doesn't know if Timmy's on the north rink or the west side town, and it's a lot easier to have it all in one location, in my opinion, but you could survey the world on that one and maybe find some other.
Well, I agree. I've watched it with softball and baseball and other complexes, and we're able to have some large national tournaments in Sioux Falls because we have the facilities in one place. And that's what you hear, that, if you have multiple kids in a tournament, that you're going one side of town and dad's taking him, and
right.
It makes sense to be there. But I wanted to at least confirm that. Yeah,
no, I don't think the temperature in the facility, I look at what the Battleship, that soccer facility, or that softball facility, it's phenomenal, and people who come to town from all over the country say it's second to none. And so I think you could put yourself in not that we built this to be a tournament destination first, but you put yourself in a conversation that you're otherwise not in. And we've always said we weren't on anybody's map for anything 2 years ago. Literally, we were the laughing stock, and so now we're not. We're sort of the envy of a lot. And we're getting calls from all over the place asking, how to replicate the model. And we're awfully proud of what we did. It's not exactly a bucket list item. This is something I never dreamed of doing. But there's a problem that needed to be solved. So, and we got an army of volunteers to help solve it. So none of us made any money doing it. But
Elberg, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I just think the story, the job that you and your group have done for both with this facility and Sioux Falls hockey is fantastic. I was never a hockey player, but I had brothers in the game, and I remember what you talked about, like the Sioux Falls being the laughing stock. People would come, I remember the Brookings facility, I think, was put up a few years before that type thing.
Yeah, 2002.
Right. But anyway, I just think it's an amazing facility. And the story, what I remember, I've been to a lot of chamber events, ribbon cuttings, and yours in particular sticks out in my mind, the event there when you guys opened it. And I think you had somebody from the Miracle on Ice USA hockey team.
Yeah, Jack O'Callahan was on the 80 Olympic team, and Jeremy Roenick, who's sort of a hockey celebrity.
The story of how you brought it all together, and I think you've built on that. So I just wanted to comment and congratulate you guys on what you're doing so far.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of hard work ahead, but we feel like we're on a pretty good foundation. So.
Councilor Staley, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Joe.
You're welcome.
Are there any plans to ever use the old ICE facility again?
Well, that's a city-owned asset. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the wrong guy to ask.
But is your organization doesn't really have like a need for extra ICE?
It's not our asset. I can tell you, I'm an opponent of owning that. If the city feels like a fourth sheet of ice needs to go into production, the slide before this tells a story of how to do that. Because I will tell you this, you can open that place back up, and you could have ice in there, but it's going to come with a subsidy, guaranteed. It lost $100 and some thousand a year for all those years before, paying the management fees. So an overdose on the economic side of it, but I'm telling you, our marginal expenses, if we can put another equity-rich sheet on the back of this, we would have. We have a powerhouse rink up there right now, but I want to be clear about it. I wouldn't invest in this. This isn't the kind of thing a guy can get a decent return from, but it is a self-sufficient facility because we built it without too much debt. The more we can concentrate the supply and capture the market up there, the better we can make it, and the more we can keep those ice rates below market. The thing I'm most proud of is the fact that we go to Minneapolis and tell our story, and they ask what we pay for ice. We say $160 in prime time, and everybody falls off their chair. So that's worth continuing. So not to avoid the question, but that's not our asset. That's the city's asset, and that's somebody else's decision what to do with it. There is, maybe some baggage tied to what to do with it if it's disposed of. That's tied to the original deed when the Minnehaha Ice guys deeded it, but that's probably for a different working session, I guess. So
Thank you.
that's a fair question, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zuber. I appreciate your efforts put into the presentation, and all the great information and the story that you have to tell is certainly a positive one for our community and the impact it has. So thank you for being here. And in the interest of time, we will move on to the next presentation.
You bet. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bill Townsend, I believe, is here to present on the Huther family match point.
Madam Chairwoman, would you mind just, we've had people gain or join the crowd and they're here for this 7 o'clock meeting. Could
Yes.
you just explain what we're doing and why we're late? Well, don't go into the whole depth of why we're late, but what we're doing yet this afternoon.
Thank you, no problem. Currently, right now, this is the Public Service Committee, and so our previous meetings went a little late, and so we are continuing our presentations that were previously on the agenda. So if you're here for the 7 o'clock meeting, hang tight, it's coming soon. But right now, we're going to be talking about the Huther Family Match Point facility, the tennis facility located right next to the Iceplex. So thank you, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you. And I do realize that we're short on time, and Joe being a good friend of mine, I do not have a presentation. I will hit some of the highlights in the time, but a lot of similarities between our projects. We were a private public partnership that took it into our own hands to build 6 indoor tennis courts with some land that was donated by Sanford out at the site that you just saw Joe report on. I think it's important to know that our mission is to support all tennis opportunities, whether they're recreational, competitive, educational, for all players. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, fully accessible to the public. Our facility opened in March of 2015. As I mentioned, 6 indoor tennis courts. We have state-of-the-art lighting. We have men's and women's locker room, a wonderful viewing open-air mezzanine for socializing. We have a classroom and a welcome area with a very limited pro shop. I'm going to hit the highlights for you. When I say we're a public facility, we changed our model from the original format where we felt that there was membership or some things to support our cash flow. What we are doing now is anybody can come out and play at the Huther Family Match Point. It's $5 per hour per player. We do take reservations. Some of our programs include we have leagues for both juniors and adults. We have lessons for both group and private drills. We have social events. Our courts are lined where the kids can start as young as 4 years old. And that's a big push by the United States Tennis Association. Some of the special events, we have hosted junior and adult tournaments as well as college and high school matches. We hosted 26 college matches that supported Augustana, University of Sioux Falls, both South Dakota State and the University of South Dakota. We've had 2 adult tournaments to date and 6 junior tournaments. And we've also hosted in our backup site for the boys and girls state tennis tournaments with the South Dakota High School Activities Association. Some of our outreach have been with organizations such as Volunteers of America, MB, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Sioux Empire, just to name a few, that we encourage those folks to come out and use our facility. Our future plans, we do have room to expand, although at this point we're finding that our finding talented instructors has been a slight challenge. Some of our some of our rates and things I can go into if the committee's interested in any of that. But that's a quick oversight. We do have scholarships available through the Connecting Kids Scholarship Program. We've had some outreach into the Sioux Falls Public Schools and trying to introduce tennis to them, as we also have a contract with the city of Sioux Falls that runs all the lessons, leagues and lessons in the parks. So that's a little bit of a quick overview in the time. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to try to answer them for you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions, Mr. Townsend? No? I guess you did such a great job that you don't have any questions. I'll just leave you with thank you also for being here. You know, having these facilities in our community offers variety to the community as well as programming. As you know, our seasons are quite a challenge to be able to continue to do different sports activities. So this offers that. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And thank you for being patient and waiting for us this evening.
Problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I will briefly open it for open discussion for public services, and just an update again that landfill ordinances will be moved to October 4th for the informational full council on October 4th. Any other items that anyone would like to bring up?